Hello and welcome to the Temple Tankard. I am Jim, aka Argent Wind, and I am your host for DM&D Chat, where we talk about all things dungeon mastering. Tonight, we're going to be talking about keeping it going, how to keep those campaigns from fizzling out, and always being fresh with new content and keeping people coming back to the table or back to the stream, as the case may be. So, before we start there, as always, I want to remind you guys that if you're looking for a game server to hang out on for role-playing games, for D&D, for MMOs, all kinds of content there, check out the House of Gamers. We'll have the link in the description below. But that way you can jump in there, see what our events are, our live shows, our things, our content you can be a part of when we have streaming games and doing hangouts and stuff. So come on by, join in, and be a part of the community. But tonight we're talking about Dungeon Masters and how to keep Dungeon Masters from keeping those campaigns going that the Dungeon Masters work so hard on. Those ongoing campaigns, we've all been in situations where those campaigns have fizzled out. Stop playing, people stop showing up there. And we're going to talk about a few things that can cause that issue and some ways to combat it. And then we'll be able, as always, be able to take the questions from the folks there. If you have questions now, they pop up there. Go ahead and throw them in the chat. Otherwise, do remember that there's about a 15-second delay or so. So if I'm waiting for a question there, it might be me waiting for a little longer than you expect. So I do have a couple of questions that have been sent in ahead of time, so I'll be able to take care of those as well. But with all that out of the way, last thing, as always, I do run my campaign. It's been going for almost 11 months now. Over on Saturdays at 2 p.m. Pacific time here. It's Avarice, the Shattered World, and we're going stronger than ever and going to have a lot of fun here. So tonight, though, keeping it going. We've all, as I mentioned before, we've all been in situations. If you've been playing D&D for long enough that you've been in a campaign that's fizzled out. DM stopped running, players stopped showing up, whatever the cause. And it's very difficult sometimes. We've also sometimes been in campaigns that have gone on longer than they should. And so we'll talk about some things that can either help revitalize a campaign that's starting to fizzle out and keep people coming back and keep the interest level up there. Now tonight, some of the advice that some of the things I talk about here and the advice that I point out here may actually be for the players as well. So those of you dungeon masters who get a chance to be players as well, yay. This is something to keep in mind as a player as well, and how you can help your DM keep a campaign, because it's not all on the DM. Some of these things are out of their control, and that's another thing that causes a little bit of frustration. So first, before I start into the difficulties here, I do want to make a big disclaimer here. If anybody out there is in a game that I've played that I've fizzled out here, this is not a criticism. This is not this is what you did wrong. This is just something that I've seen happen. I've experienced it, and some things that some ideas I come up with there to help maybe combat some of that happening. This is not you. It's definitely not, because I've been there too. I've had games that I'm running fizzle out. And so I've had to go back and kind of think about what caused that. Why did that happen? So the challenges we face as a dungeon master in keeping a long running campaign going. The first one is fairly obvious, but it's also one of the biggest, and that's schedules. Obviously, when someone changes schedules, or there's vacation times or holiday times, or just someone's work schedule changes or family situation changes there, it can cause a big disruption to the campaign, and it's hard to sometimes recover from those. So some things to help with that issue. First of all, when you're planning your campaign, before you even start a session zero, as a DM, think about when you're going to have available, when you think are going to be consistently available. So if it's going to be once a week at a specific time, or once a month at a specific time for a certain amount of time, it's really important you know that ahead of time and that you're able to commit to that, because nothing is more frustrating than players wanting to play and ready to go and cancellations happen. And there's nothing, cancellations are going to happen. It's inevitable. It's going to happen. But at least if you have an idea ahead of time of the commitment you can make, That's going to really help when when you communicate to the players and get the campaign going. Everyone knows what to expect. Now, again, changes happen. This is where communication comes in, and communication is going to be key for all of this. Let people know in advance as much as you can. Obviously, emergencies happen, things come up there, but as much as you can keep players informed in advance that there's going to be a disruption to a schedule, or a change in something, or maybe you need to switch days or switch times. If it's a temporary or a permanent thing, you've got to talk to the players and make sure everyone's on board and everyone knows what's going on. If you're lucky, you can make that switch and there's no disruption. You can keep things moving forward. And if you're unlucky, well, you might lose a player. You might have to switch things out. You might have to put a campaign on break for a little bit. But again, communication is going to be the key to all of that. So being consistent, honor everyone's time. Players and DMs, you need to honor each other's time. If you can't make it and it's a consistent thing, or you know there's going to be a conflict, let people know. That way they can either plan for it, or if it's something where there's a change is going to need to happen, then there's enough time to get something in place. Because nothing feels weirder than suddenly a switch. We've all watched those TV shows where all of a sudden they switch actors, or from one movie to the sequel they change the actor for a role. It's kind of weird and it's hard to really justify. It's hard to keep interest sometimes. Like, I like the old one better, or this new one's great, or whatever. But still, you want to make sure that you're honoring people's times and keeping that and letting people know in advance as much as you can. Um, so some things that can happen if there's a situation where someone is going to be out, things that can help you as a DM are come up with some ideas for how the player can be either done as an NPC. If you know the characters well enough, you can either run them as an NPC, but there's some things, caveats around that. Or if there's story driven ways of what would make sense for them to bow out. If the player has commitments to people in town, or if they're part of a guild or part of some secret organization, they can get whisked away to go do something, or they get a letter that's really important, or something, or maybe a letter from home, and their family's in danger and they have to go back and do something. If the party's in the midst of something and they can't get away, you can have the player bow out for a session or more, and then come back when that thing is resolved. So think of those scenarios in there, and be aware that potentially you might want to like think of some sort of fail safes in case somebody can't be there. Like knowing, well, this player is involved with this. If they can't be here, this could be a reason why they're gone, especially if they're gone for a prolonged period of time. So that way you're not worried about a player missing a session or two. There's still a story way and still things in the campaign that keeps it making sense. You don't want and having a player be an NPC for multiple sessions, they sort of get lost in the background noise at that point. But they are still there, and when the player comes back, if they've been an NPC, you can at least fill them in. Here are the things you missed. Your character was here. So they can at least keep up with what's going on. I mentioned a caveat before. Do not kill a player's character while they're in NPC mode. Do everything you can to make sure they're okay, because nothing is going to frustrate a player more than, hey, I was gone for 2 weeks. Sorry, I had vacation or family stuff, and I'm back. And what do you mean my player's dead? My character's dead. That's going to throw everything into disarray. So, but that kind of gets us into our second challenge, and that is roster changes. Sometimes things happen where a character needs to change. And it's very common in games. Early on in games, characters die, you have no way to bring them back. So bringing in a secondary character to fill in. A character gets turned to stone for a while. There's no way to turn them back from a statue into a real person again. You got a backup. You bring in a new character. Maybe that new character can do something about that person being turned to stone or whatever. And I see a person who knows exactly what I'm talking about there in the chat. So you have the idea of having a backup character that's waiting in the wings that can jump in if needed and then can move back out. And so you may end up moving almost into a more of a troop style of game where people have multiple characters that can mix and match. Um, and that's something you can either plan for initially or push on to something else. And no, Zach, you're not attacked at all. That's not it at all. Um, so um, things about those roster changes. Other reasons. So if a character dies, a character gets incapacitated. If a player does have to leave, then finding a way to transition that character out in a way that isn't going to feel forced or just messed up. Try not to just flat out kill a character. I mean, it's because the person has to leave. By killing that character, you remove them from the story, and they may have ties to other NPCs. They may have ties to the players, um, and so that's something that's it's like it's such a final thing to happen that I mean, as much as death is a finality in D&D, when you have raise dead and revivify and all that kind of things, but still, the idea that when they're gone, it's a lot harder to bring them back. Where if they just go somewhere else or they have a commitment that takes them away from the party for a while, or we had a character change right in the beginning of our campaign before stream started. A player was removed from the game and another player came in. And so that person's character got sent back home and the new player took their place. And the new character took their character's place. So the idea that you can move characters in and out without just flat out killing them, because again, it's not great for the rest of the party to experience a character death, especially when there's not really a good reason for it in game. Now you can maybe work things out that way, but again, try to look at it, use that as a last resort or something that if it makes sense for the story and people are not going to freak out about it, then that may be an option. But again, look at other options as well. Um, the best thing to do, if it is a situation where a player is changing a character, maybe a character isn't working out for them, maybe a character is being incapacitated, or something in the story just isn't working with that character anymore for whatever reason, talk to the player. Communication again. See what they want to do. See what you can work out together in in cooperation with each other to fit something new into the story. If they don't have ideas off the top of their head, work with them. Come up with some different scenarios and solutions until you both come up with one that's going to work for the story, for the campaign, with the rest of the party. So if a character is being moved out, a new character moves in, and it doesn't disrupt the whole campaign and the story events you have in place. It can sometimes even bring in an advantage. If a character, if a new character comes in with knowledge that's going to help the party, if a new character comes in with skills the party maybe didn't have in the first place, or has connections or ties to other things that can help out the party in some way, all the better. You can literally bring in that in and shore the story up and help it move forward with that character change. Um, so again, that communication is a huge part of it. If you have a player who's staying but changing characters, really work with them on how they're going to bring in that new character. And if they want to bring in something completely off the wall, well, you might need to help work with them and rein that in a little bit. And I see a comment there. Yeah, uh, yeah, exactly. As long as changing character isn't habitual or happens every week, yeah, again, work with your character to bring a new character in. Exactly. Um, you, it's hopefully not going to be something where they keep doing it over and over again. And if that's the case, if they can't settle on a character, it might be if you are lucky and you have other people that want to play in your game and you have a larger group that you can draw from, then it might be time to say, hey, it doesn't seem to be working out. You can't really find a niche in the campaign. You keep wanting to change characters over and over again. Maybe it's time to let somebody else have a turn. That's again, it might help the campaign. If somebody's not happy being there, don't force it. Don't make them continue if they're not enjoying themselves. And so that may be part of the communication you have with them is saying, hey, do you want to make a new character? Maybe you want to let somebody else bring a new character in. That's something that's okay too. Whatever going to help the campaign, to help the whole group move forward. Okay. So again, roster changes are always going to be a challenge and bring all kinds of things, bring in all kinds of issues there. And as you mentioned there, exactly, it does get exhausting. It's if it happens over and over and over again, it's hard to keep coming up with ideas to bring somebody new in. And there's nothing like having a group of people where there's one character who's still there and everyone else has changed to other characters for whatever reasons. That's going to be hard to keep a campaign going too because those characters aren't tied to all the events that have happened throughout the campaign. So again, whatever you can do to keep things stable. And if that's where you kind of go back to those schedule changes. If somebody has to bow out, work with them, work with the party, work with the players to bring something in that's going to work and keep everyone interested and wanting to move forward. Um, another big issue, and this is one that every DM is going to go with here is burnout. Players can burn out, but DMs can also burn out. It's exhausting to keep going and going and going. And sometimes you might need to just find something to take a break from it, or you might need to take a break for a week just to reset and recharge or come up with new ideas or whatever else like that. But burnout is a big thing. And I want to say players recognize when your DM is having a hard time and see what you can do to help. If they ask you for feedback, like, hey, I'm having a hard time here. What's working and what's not? Well, be honest. Help them. Now, DM, don't take it personally. This is something that can help you, but really look at how you can get that feedback that's going to help recharge you and maybe give you some new ideas. If you have those dangling plot threads or those things the players have seen saying, hey, as a DM, I'm struggling here a little bit there. What's something you want to see? What's something you've run into but you want to see more of or want to go check out? And that's where you can have a side quest or do something a little bit different or shift away from the main story for a little bit. They're finding a way to give them a break from that intense, ongoing, crazy campaign to let's have a little side adventure. Let's do something else here. So a way you can a way you can prevent burnout is to ask for that feedback and find out what's going to help me, and then try to maybe take something in a little different direction for a change, or shut things off a little bit. Now that's not always going to be super easy to do, and it may be a little bit stressful to try to do it, but it's something that can really revitalize you as a dungeon master to give something new a try. Um, so that burnout issue, I mean, obviously, real life getting you down, uh, things having changing, stressors that are happening, that can all happen. And sometimes you just need to take a break. And that's where, again, the scheduling thing, talking and communicating. If you're saying, I'm having a hard time here, I just need a week off to not do something for a change there, to clear my head, to go there. And that's okay. Don't feel like it's a failure on your part as a DM to need that break because we all do sometimes. And so when you have those chances or when you need that, communicate to your players. Be honest with them because they're going to appreciate that as well. Saying, "Hey, it's not that I don't want to run this game. It's not that I don't want to be a part of this. Not that I'm having fun. I'm just needing a break for a minute." And again, that honesty is going to go a long ways toward making sure you can come back to the table. And when you feel that refresh, when you have those ideas and those new things, you can come right back into it. And some ways to help with that burnout when you are taking a break, read some books, maybe in a genre similar to your campaign. Read some comics, watch some anime, watch some TV shows, some movies. Maybe just sit down with somebody who's not involved in the campaign and saying, hey, here's some ideas. Start brainstorming a little bit. That kind of thing can help as well. So look for some inspiration. It maybe you just need to go out there and get some new ideas or take something in a different direction you didn't think of before. Another great resource for that is go on YouTube, TikTok. Believe me, D&D TikTok is kind of incredible. The number of plot hooks and cool homebrew ideas and tips that are out there, really helpful. I mean, it seems kind of odd, but I never would have said this a year over a year ago. But I find a lot of inspiration there, a lot of cool things. So um, just do a search for D&D plot hooks. You find all kinds of cool things. Um, look into some third party sources and check things out there. See what jumps out at you and saying, "Hey, this could be cool to incorporate in my campaign." And again, now you have something new and fresh, or a new idea to bring in to help push things forward. Okay, so yeah, just for burnout, get feedback, be honest, and look for some inspiration. Okay, and the biggest thing as a DM here is don't be so hard on yourself. Please, I mean, being a DM is a big job. There's a lot to it. I'm not going to lie and say, oh, it's a super easy thing. It's challenging, but it's also super fun, and it's the only time you can really bring people into a story and share it with people in a way you can't otherwise. As being a writer or being at that, you put it out there and people read it, but they can't interact with it. In D&D, it's a story you're all going to be take a part in together and try going in different directions and doing new things and doing things unexpected. So those campaigns are just ways of just keeping a story going, a long form there. And then at some point, when it's time, when you feel it's a good time for it there, or maybe the campaign is stalling, but you see an ending. You see a way to resolve some big issues or take on the big bad or whatever it is there. Move toward that and have the ending. If it's that end of plot, a certain plot arc that's coming up there, and you know it's going to come to an end, work toward a satisfactory ending. If you have an ending, take it if you need it. Um, you don't have to push on be it past it, or you may find that you end it, and the players are if they're satisfied, or if there's if it ends on a good note, or if it ends on a cool thing, maybe throw in a cliffhanger, or throw in a way that it could continue again someday, and then to be continued. And when you're ready for it, you start up a new campaign, maybe the same cast of characters, maybe a different cast of characters, same world, similar plots, and you can drive a new campaign on where the old one had its ending. Okay. So so and yeah, with a campaign, if there is, make sure it's got a resolution. That's such a huge thing. Is that make sure it has a resolution. Make sure the players get their epilogues. Make sure the characters have their moments to see where things end up, and maybe some of the ideas that they have for maybe their character retires or wants to go off and do something else. That may spark a new idea for a new campaign. Okay. So, I do have some questions here, and I see some comments rolling in there. I'm going to start with a couple of questions that I have kind of that were preloaded here. But if you have more questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat there. We'll kind of get to them and keep going here. But if you have specific things that maybe advice around campaigns or things that you've noticed or just questions about campaigns and how things can help there, throw them in the chat for us, and we'll keep things going here for a bit. Um, I do see a comment here I wanted to address here. The campaign brought in, uh, they bought every book in D&D Beyond, started making new characters every week. And I gotta say, I love making characters. I've made 30 characters and I've played three of them, or three or four of them. Um, and so, and yeah, if you're lucky, if you're in a campaign setting that does have a troop style game and it's a mercenary company, and you can move characters in and out there, that's great. So you maybe encourage that. First question I'm going to address here, though, is how do you make a character feel special or given attention to once their respective story arcs have fizzled out? Okay. Characters come in with backstories. They may have developed goals over the course of the campaign that's going on there, and those goals may resolve. And how do you keep that character interested? Well, hopefully, the campaign has brought a group of people together that all have a common goal. So if there's something else there's something they're big they're working toward, or something, this big disaster they're trying to ward off. Just because the character's specific arc has fizzled out, or their backstory big complication has resolved, the overall groups has not. And so that's where hopefully that player will be invested in what the whole group is doing, or something may come up during the campaign that gives them a new arc to go. And sometimes maybe a player just has something they seem to be interested in, and here's a little nugget that maybe you'll look into later on. Maybe you'll check this out, or maybe you'll find this. If they have something they're interested in, you can keep their story going by throwing them a new bone to play with. Um, so the idea of how to uh, keep them from fizzling out. Well, hopefully they won't. But if they need some help, this is where again communication. If they feel like their character is done, or doesn't, or shouldn't be there anymore, or wants to move on, that may be a conversation where you have a roster change. If the player themselves isn't having fun, isn't so much the character, but they're not having fun, then maybe it's a player change. And so it comes down to communication and talking it over. If somebody's really not happy with how things are going with their character, talk to them, figure it out. Um, so that's kind of uh, my advice around that one for the most part here. Um, uh, Found my players asking to create an NPC they're likely to meet in the next session. That's a great way. Getting the players invested in the story, like having them design an NPC, maybe even a location, some sort of organization that's out there in the world that they might interact with at some point or other. Again, it may tie into their backstories. So a great way to, yeah, get the players, like, say, hey, throw me a, like, you mentioned somebody in your backstory there. What's their name? Who are they? Where are they from? Or hey, I want to find somebody who knows about this stuff. Okay, well, that's at least something. Maybe they give you an idea. Like, I've heard a rumor about this guy in a town somewhere around here that has this information. So if the players can throw you an NPC, again, invest them in the campaign, invest them in the story, and you have a little extra thing to kind of drive things along there. It's a great idea, actually. Um, and again, the players are suddenly to see the NPC that they helped you design or gave you the idea for. That's a cool thing because now the players have had an actual like impact on the world. So that's a win-win for everyone. So another question here: what makes an overall story keep being told? When you've already covered the main things, is it ever evolving, or is it more keep adding more things that haven't been explored yet? It depends on your game. If you have a big plot point that you're moving toward, and there's nothing really beyond that, it may be time to end the game. But there may be those little plot threads that are still dangling out there that players want to go after. And, or there could be something that this resolved, but there's still more out there. There's still other things to deal with, and these things. And so it really depends on your campaign, whether the story keeps going or whether it does resolve. And again, it may be that it resolves for these characters, and you're starting up a new campaign in a new part of the world that has a new cast moving on. So, it really, the campaign can evolve. I'll let you a little behind the curtain there if any of my players are out there. But when I started this campaign, um, January 1st last year, I didn't have a BBEG. I didn't have a villain. I had some plot threads that were happening. I had some localized things that were going on here, but I didn't know what the overall problem was going to be until like I think 10 sessions in maybe. And all of a sudden I had, oh, this would be a cool idea. Or I can tie this into this person. And then so you may find that it kind of happens as you go along. Now, if you have a campaign idea and like worked out of like, hey, I got this idea of they're going to go up against a demon prince who's doing this terrible thing, and it's working his way through there, getting through his minions and finding this guy and taking him down. That's a whole campaign arc you have. But what happens when you take down the demon? Is he really the thing, or did something summon the demon, or did something bring that demon into place? Is there more beyond that? Again, it really kind of depends. And what makes the story a lot of fun is the details they run into along the way, the cool people they find, the cool items they hunt down, the side quests they have. If all they have is that progression of like bang, 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 bad guy, bad guy, bad guy, bad guy, big bad guy, there's not much of a campaign there. So you want to give them a chance to roll around and to kind of meander along with the story. So again, the campaign can evolve. And what you may find is that based on what the characters have been doing, that idea you had for that big bad confrontation to happen at the very end there might change. And don't be so wedded that this is what it's going to be that you miss some cool opportunities along the way to let the story evolve and let the story change. And again, it may be that things are going along well and some other idea comes up and the next adventure happens. Great, you can keep going. Or resolve it and move on with a new party. Either way you want to go. It's your campaign and it's your campaign shared with the players. If you talk to them and they say, I want to keep going. I got more to do. I got things I want to see happen. Then if you have the ideas, do it. If you don't, but they're interested in keeping going, maybe you break for a week or two, or maybe even a month or so, and saying, hey, starting this date, we're going to continue with part two of the campaign. And then you're off and running with a new adventure. Same party, same world, but you're now the heroes that conquered this bad thing, and now there's more to do. So again, that campaign can live on through something you didn't have planned originally, but because the players are interested, and they've gained knowledge and things along the way, it can really help drive on to the next stage if you all want to. Okay. Um, uh, this is in conjunction with that. The next question is perfect for this one. It's going to dovetail into this. How do you bring in new stories to existing ones and still keep in the continuity of the previous lore? Um, Lore is a tricky thing, and you might need to look back on your notes if you've had good notes, or if you've hopefully have ideas for where you went and how the story went like that. And it is kind of important if you're going to run a campaign, especially you're going to run a campaign in the same world, to have an idea of what's out there, what the players have done, what they have done, how they had not done. Something they didn't interact with before might be something they interacted later on. And so you kind of need to keep your lore straight. And so it may be you have notebooks with little entries for different things or some sort of crazy flow chart. I've seen people have like spreadsheets and all kinds of stuff there to keep track of their stuff there. However you organize your campaign there, it's really important that if you are going to bring in new stories and work it into the same continuity in the same world, that you know what happened beforehand. So that's where having your notebook, having your various notes or anything else like that, all of those things are going to help you do that in the future when you're ready for it, or if you're going to be doing it. Um, and it may be that you do a new campaign, new world, new place, new cast. That's cool too. So really, with everything be you, but with fun, it's gonna be fun for you and fun for your players. Yeah. Let's see here. Get some more questions popping up in chat there. I'm running out of my preloaded ones here. So who's got questions about some campaigns or some comments to throw in to keep things going here? I'll while you're thinking about that, I'll go into my next question here, but let's keep things rolling here. Um, how do you truly know when it's time for a story to end, as opposed to making it the last of the players, as opposed to make it last of the players all not wanting it to end? Um, and so a suggestion there. So with that in mind, you may have a campaign idea, and this is going to be the end. And the players they want more, and you don't have more. Well, communicate with that with them. Say, I don't have any more for this campaign, but you might say, hey, I have a new idea for a campaign, and this is the second part of this question here. So about your next campaign to get them excited for it. Yeah, that's a great way to go. It's like, hey, Let's campaign, same world, different region, something else is going on. So new cast of characters, and depending on how you want that campaign to go, they can have ties to their current characters. They can be you can set it like years later on. Somebody could be like a kid from one of your previous campaign characters. That can be a fun way to tie things in together if you want. But really, just whatever's going to be fun for you and them. If they do the big bad, they resolve the thing, they save the world. Do they really need? Is there more for them to keep doing? Maybe not. And that's something that, again, give them that resolution, give them that chance to retire or find their ending, and then see where things go from there. And again, it may be that this campaign ended, but I have an idea for a next one, and the cast comes out of retirement and the characters move on with the next part of the campaign. It really depends on you and your what you want to do. Because again, as Dungeon Master, you're the one putting this all together. So what's gonna be fun for you and what's gonna be fun for them? If they say they want more and you've got some ideas, then by all means give them what they want. Okay, something popped in here. So let's take a couple of these here. Okay. And so what about when some players are getting excited to get to that finale and move on, and get that closure, but other players don't want it? How do you resolve that for people? Um, it really comes down to if the campaign is resolving, and let's say the characters are all level 12, level 15, level 20, whatever it is, and some of those characters really want to keep going and want to go do more with that character. There's a couple of options. One, if you have ideas to take a high level game, give the players an opportunity to say maybe bring in a new character to go along with these old characters. Again, so inject some new blood. People shake things up a little bit there. Try some new characters out for something different here, but realize that those characters that didn't come in the campaign are still out there in the world. So they may come along and join later on if a character dies or a character gets lost, and maybe they bring an old character out of retirement and bring them in there. So it really comes down to if people want to keep playing the same characters and you have something that goes along with a high level campaign and you want to keep moving forward with that, make that an option. So if some people don't, let them make a new character, same level, work out the gear, work things out there. But again, that communication piece of like, how do you keep things going? How do you keep everyone happy about it there? And you, it, if the answer is this story is done, then work with them and say, hey, these characters are tell me what happens with this character. And it may be that they want to move on, but the story is just not there for them. You might say, tell me about your adventures. What does this character want to do? They want to go off into astral space and become a spelljammer and go off and fight Githyanki and mind flayers and whatever else that and have a full spelljammer campaign. Then by all means make that part of the story, part of their epilogue. But it's not something you're going to run. Maybe not now, maybe in the future. It might spark an idea down the road. But again, you have the final say. If you say the campaign's done, and let's move on to something new. Um, so, and that again, hopefully your players will respect that, and hopefully they'll enjoy that, and hopefully they'll be excited for what's next. Because if you have more, they can be excited by something brand new, something different, something they didn't expect from before. Um, so how do you keep a player moving when they stall? This is communication. Like you may need to sit down and say, "Hey, I see you're having a hard time with this, struggling with this here. What would be something to help you, a player, get interested? Or if your character, what's going to make your character more interesting for you? Is it going to be finding a love interest? Is it going to be finding that cool new item or a new ability? Maybe you retrain into something different. That fighter becomes a ranger. Um, that's something they can do too. If you have that time built in where the character's stalling and they're just not engaged in the campaign, then maybe the character needs to switch something, change it up. swap out a class ability, swap out class specializations, or maybe an entire class if it makes sense. Have them bring in their evil twin. I mean, I'm just saying there's all kinds of things you can do that can help move that player along when they stall out, when they lose interest. If the player doesn't have anything, well, maybe ask them like, do you want to bow out of the campaign? And again, there's nothing wrong with that. If they truly aren't having fun with it, they truly aren't jiving with the content and really being interested in what's going on, it may be they need to bow out and you bring in a new player. So um, it's not a great, and I mean, and talk to the party members too, like saying, hey, is there anything that you like? And maybe it's happening at the game. Um, like it maybe you do something in game, sit everyone down, like okay, things are having a hard time here. Put our cards on the table here. What do you like? Like have them have that interaction in character. Like you seem kind of bored. What can we do? Do you want it? And this is where if they have that interaction in character, or maybe you take it out of game and say, hey, we're going to have a little out of game session time, talk it over things, and see how do we move things forward. How do we bring this person up to speed, and how do we get them interested? And so it could be that if this is where a player talking to a player saying, hey, how about we do something like this, or let's add this element to that'll mess things up, or let's do something that's gonna drive the drive the DM crazy. um Talk to each other. So yeah, if players can work with each other on what's gonna help drive them forward, that's a great thing too. um so next question: how do you deal about a player character build or unwise magic item drop that threatens to derail the campaign as it detracts from the story/fun for made at the table? Uh, this is a great question. And this has happened. Something you didn't anticipate in the character build is just too gross, too powerful. And if there's a way that makes sense to dial it back a bit, if that bonus is just too much or that ability is too much, you can say that talk to the player and just say, hey, this is causing some real difficulty here. Can we, for me to challenge you guys, or this is making too many encounters trivial here. How about we do this? And most players, if they're reasonable, are going to be okay with that. Now, if they're not, if they're that power gamer, no, I want to do this. Well, you might need to take different measures, but that's at least a place to start. Now, if it's an item, well, well, then it might be that you put some sort of limit on that item. The item, especially if it's like a magic item, maybe it fizzles out, or maybe a new ability gets triggered by something or other that makes it less effective, or there's that item might have a history and someone wants that thing. They know you have it, and now they're going to come hunt you for it. And now there's another plot element to get that thing away from them, or it might be too dangerous to keep using. So, again, story ideas that can help, talking to the player can help. And again, if other players, if everyone's enjoying the fact that this person's like raw and be able to destroy things, most players are going to see it and go, "That's a little crazy. That's too much." And when you start having to throw like the fourth or fifth dragon at the party because one just wasn't enough and two didn't do it because this guy's just killing them too fast, then the party's going to catch in on that too. It's like this is just not fun for everyone. So how do we make this more fun? How do we make this more interesting? So again, talk to the player initially, see if there's something you can do with them saying, hey, let's tone this back a little bit. Don't remove it. Don't just like get rid of it, but let's nerf it a little bit. Let's tweak it a little bit so it's not quite so gross. The idea of a wand of fireballs. And like it's brutal. A low level party that gets a wand of fireballs and suddenly they're hucking out fireballs every turn because they can do that now. That's pretty powerful. And so you might want to say the wand has fewer charges, or over time the wand won't recharge as much as it used to because it's a powerful item, but it drains. And just say you use up the fireball wand, it only got the 6 charges instead of 7, and that 7th one won't come back. and then slowly dial it back to the point where it's not quite so gross anymore, and they can't throw that. I'm going to upcast my fireball to level 9 with 6 charges, and then that okay, we do that next time. Maybe it only goes to 6 charges instead of 7. You keep doing it, maybe it goes to 5 instead of 6, and keep dial it back until the one slowly burns out. So a lot of items you can think of ways to kind of dial them back if they're too gross. Um, and if the player is not willing to change something or any combination they're in. And so, uh, yeah, that's something to keep in mind there for those kind of issues there. And with the player build, uh, again, talk to the player and just say, hey, this is just not working. This is just too much to deal with. Can we tweak this in a way that isn't quite so gross? Or if they say, well, screw it, I'm not playing that character anymore. Okay, bring in a new character. Well, I don't want to be in this campaign anymore. Well, bring in a new player. I mean, if it's that important that they trivialize your encounters, then maybe they're not the right player for your game, and that's okay. So a lot of campaigns get stuck in the middle. Any advice getting out of the doldrums of the campaign? Um, Again, look for inspiration. Uh, a lot of times, like you have that idea, you thought this far, and maybe don't have an idea where it's going, or the players just are sort of mucking around and not really getting anywhere. Bring in some, like you have rumors about the big bad is out there. There's a crazy. Um, I keep the idea of like there's something out there that there's a problem of some kind, or introduce a new threat. At like they they think they're all doing just great and things are kind of boring. Well, bring in another threat, bring in something different. Maybe this was only a lieutenant to something bigger and worse. Um, Again, so those doldrums of the campaign are gonna a lot of times turn into um uh, a lot of times those doldrums of the campaign tend to be where there's either a lull in what's happening, there's not really much going on. So push something like a favorite shopkeep gets murdered. It's what happened, what's going on here. Then tie that to a cult that's doing something, or tie that to some strange fey creature that's going around hunting people, and suddenly what started off as as kind of a lull in the campaign has a new set of plot threads to follow. And again, if you're struck with ideas and don't have inspiration, ask your players, what's going to make you, what are you into? So, so hopefully that can help you get out of those doldrums and moving on to something bigger and more fun for everybody. So, what if it's not the end of the campaign? Uh, the player prays with Didi, they help the group out, and they have nothing new for the current session. Um, so I will say this, that divine intervention, those wish spells that come along, anything that can sort of like end a campaign or end a encounter or end something like that there, remember you have the final say in how those things play out. You don't have to say problem resolved. You can literally say you get assistance, you get something to help, but it doesn't just solve the problem for you. Wish spells and divine intervention shouldn't completely derail everything. Again, you have control over it. The player may wish for something, but uh, there's always a chance to put your own spin on it. Maybe they wish for something and it just isn't quite as powerful as you expected it to be or wanted to be. Still, they blew a wish, so they should get something for it, but maybe not quite as much as they wanted to. Or say it resolves and then bring in something else. If you don't have anything else, then you might get them to so you have the idea of boom, this big thing happened, and you look at them and now what? And they have to come up with what's going to happen next. And they don't know. Well, then kind of take a moment, and they're going to go somewhere else. They're going to look into things. They're going to investigate maybe what happened, or what's left over, or what's still out there, or what the resolution might be, and let them start poking and prodding and finding those things, and like make them figure it out. They're the ones who made the wish. They're the one who called down their deity. Look at them and say, now what? And you may not have anything for the current session, but they're going to come up with something. They're going to maybe start a role play session between the players. They like, well, what did you do that for? Oh, now we can't get those answers, and so it might turn into, or that was amazing. Now what? What can we do next? Again, let the players fill in some time for you, because they're a part of the story too. So if they if that and hopefully that won't end the campaign with that kind of thing. Uh, I mean, if if you're that close to the end of the campaign and something that big happens, then at that point, pull them into what they want next, or what they see is happening next. So again, you have that issue of the players have decision making capabilities too. They can push a campaign themselves. So don't be afraid to bring them into it. Um, so yeah, so having powerful items have charges is a big deal, and that way and losing those charges again, a great way to get rid of items that are just too powerful is the charges stop working after a while. That's a great way to do things there. Agreed. Yeah, exactly. Um, okay, question. How is a DM when you know the campaign is ending and there are a few things you want to introduce, to be important? How do you encourage the players to explore said areas? Um, you hope that your players and their characters are invested. If they've been going through a campaign for a while, you throw a carrot out there, they're going to follow it. You throw a lead to something, they're probably going to go that direction there. And so if you want them to go in different directions there, give them a lead, show them something. Maybe if you have to and they've got people that are important to them, somebody kidnaps one of their Princess Peach and takes them off to a castle, and you got to go check out the castle there. I mean, there's some ways that are a little less trope centric and a little more interesting. But um, again, this is where some of those DM tips, so some plot hooks there, throwing those plot hooks out there and see which one they grab on. Maybe you throw out 3 rumors of 3 different regions where something similar to what's going on in your campaign is happening, and now they oh, that one sounds it. We should go check that out. And so a lot of times you throw it out there, you throw out the bait, they'll take the bait. Um, yeah, here's a shiny fairy, go get it. Here's a polymorph goat, go find it. Uh here's the shiny MacGuffin that you need to help this thing over here. Let's go find this thing. So again, you can draw them out to players. Again, and it may be that, hey, this item was here. Well, I have this really cool area I want to go to them. They don't know any better. Take the item and move it to where you want it to be. And now the thing that they were going after isn't there. It's actually somewhere else. And it's a new area to explore, some new people, a new town, some new enemies. So you can drive the story to a new location, into a new setting, with the right bait. And again, you know the plot elements you have out there. You can change them. Nothing for you is set in stone until the party encounters it. So you can always draw them to somewhere new by just moving the goalpost, or just changing the direction of things, or that was a false rumor and here's the real story. You get there and find out that no, this is not the place. It's actually this place instead. Or this thing that we wanted here was stolen by someone. Somebody else got here first. Let's go find them. And now you have a way to get to someplace else. So again, that kind of that drive them off to a new thing. Um, and so yeah, and so yeah, so within a campaign, you can always shift things around as needed as the party goes and investigates and tries to find new stuff. Um, Conclusion is what you meant because of the character's reaction. How you interject your own spin to make sure the ending is seen for what it was meant to be. That's a good question. Sometimes a player is going to misinterpret things. You meant for this to be something, and they see it as something different. And I will say this: sometimes the players have a better idea than what you had. So if they think this is it, this is what's happening, and you go, that's kind of cool. You're right, and play into that aspect now. Or you say, that's a good theory, but there's also this theory, and there's also this theory. And again, giving them multiple avenues to explore is a great way to push a campaign forward, and to let them explore more. But yeah, if they come up with a great idea, like they misinterpret what you said, but what they thought you said was a good idea, go for it, steal it, use it. As a player, the biggest gift you can give a DM is a plot idea, an NPC, a location, something that might spark something for the DM, even if it's a false rumor, or even if it's something that's not quite right, but that's cool. So I'm going to bring that in somewhere else. So as a player, don't be afraid to draw conclusions, especially drawing wrong conclusions. It's when you draw a conclusion as a player and no other evidence is going to change you from that conclusion. That can be a little difficult. And so you might have to really steer them to saying that's a red herring. That's the wrong way. Or let it be the right way and let them travel down this path. And then maybe at some point something brings them back to the correct path there. Again, it's those invisible rails. Like, don't just say you're wrong. You're right for now, but come back over this way now because this is where things are not happening now. So I hope that kind of helps in there a little bit with that question there. We are running low on time. We're getting close to the end here, guys. I want to say great questions. You guys were awesome. I really appreciate all the participation and comments, and you guys did so great today. But so just to kind of sum up real quick here. So for your campaigns, when you're running into issues, and again, scheduling is going to be a problem there, but communication and being as consistent as possible is a huge way to help out with that. Be okay with changing rosters if you need to. If somebody needs to leave, be okay for it. Uh, a roster change is inevitable at some point. It to have a stable party that go through the entire campaign from beginning to end without anyone changing is astounding to me. But let it happen. Let those changes happen. Embrace them. Look, those can be new ways to revitalize a campaign if you need to. Don't let them end a campaign because someone had to leave or a character wanted to change. And again, burnout. We all experience those times when it's just going to be too much there. So just take a breather. Take a step back. Look for some inspiration. Talk to your players and just see where things can go. Hope this helps out, you guys. I want to thank you all for being here. Our next session, our next chat, my intention is to be talking about villains, from the minor annoying little pains in the butt to the BBEG. What makes them fun? What makes them work? What makes them fit into a campaign? And what makes them really, really mean something to your players, to the campaign, to the world? Because those are the guys that are making things happen, for better or worse. So next week, talking about villains. Our the one after that, I'm still tossing some ideas around, but definitely next week we'll be talking about villains. So I hope you can be here for that. Think about some questions for that. If you want to throw some comments to me, or throw something in Discord, or if you know me anywhere else and want to throw some suggestions my way, I'd love to hear them. So again, thanks so much for being here. Thanks for being a part of our chat here, and I hope hope to see you guys running some games. So take care, and we'll see you next time.